Hey, this is Cody from the Keepers of Nerddom. It's been a little while. Good to talk to you guys again. It's been a hot minute. I wanted to talk for a minute because it's Elden Ring. We should have had a review on it way sooner, but I've been super busy and then spending time on this game because holy cow, Elden Ring. First and foremost, it is in many ways it's labeled as its own separate entity, but it truly is in many ways. It just feels like Dark Souls 4 in a good way. It's an amazing game. Big open world, that's the difference as far as that. You also can summon your own summons, not just NPCs that randomly show up for different things, or not so random as in they show up only because you helped them out or had a conversation with them. So that still happens in this game, which is really cool. It truly is an amazing game. I spent my first playthrough of this game exploring everything, just looking for stuff, just trying to find every boss, every cave, everything that I could. And so I was in that first playthrough for a really long time because it was so much fun to explore, to see the different things that you could potentially discover. And some of them you wouldn't necessarily all find out. I realized after my first playthrough, I totally missed the two-headed dragon secret boss fight. And so I'm looking forward to getting to see him again. Well, for the first time actually on my next playthrough, because I've taken my time, and it's also just been work-wise, just not having the time to really put into it like I'd love to, sit down for an entire week and just beat the snot out of this game because it's that beautiful. One thing that they, let's just say this, like the story is in many ways just as confusing as Dark Souls type stories, but that can be both a really good thing if you love the idea of searching for your lore. It can also be a challenging thing because it is weird. It's strange whenever you have to discover all the little pieces for yourself. But that's the beauty of it. You are discovering this game for yourself. And go ahead and fall down that hole. There you go. All right. And so that's the beauty of these games, is that does it really truly explain a whole lot to you? It actually does a decent amount, because even in the intro video, there's an outline of who's ruling this world, who's in charge, who's more powerful than everybody else. But there's also still this like finding out the connections and finding different NPCs to just put the pieces together. But it's also, you are discovering this world as your character in the game is discovering the world. It's not spelled out for you, and that is so much fun. That is the beauty of a game that knows truly what it is, and that's amazing. But that can also be really confusing for people that in modern gaming timeframes, they're used to this idea of everything is spelled out for you. It's all given to you in a super basic way, and that's the beauty of these games, that they harken back to an older time where things were not as, in some ways they're more simple because they don't explain everything to you, but it's also makes it harder because then you have to figure that out. But as you play this game and you get better and better at it, it becomes an easier and easier game. And then you run into the bosses that say, oh, you think it's an easy game until you fight this. And thankfully your skills help with that, but oftentimes the bosses still, they challenge you in a deep way. So first off, let's just go into some positives, and then maybe some critiques or negatives, if you will. Positives, right? So in many ways, the reason I say it feels like Dark Souls 4 is because the story in some senses it's similar as far as the idea of being afraid of the change. And Dark Souls really focuses more on that, being afraid of the change, whereas this doesn't focus on that. But there's a concept of there's always change going to be happening. And also, in Dark Souls, this idea of the fire fading, is it actually a bad thing? And you're trying to become the Elden Lord and collect the Elden Ring, and so there's also this idea of fire gives life in the Dark Souls series, or at least that's what it pretends to be. And in this series, it's this idea of the tree. Both produce, in a different way, life, if you will. Fire produces life by giving out energy, but trees also, they continue to produce life by oxygen, by the different roles that they play. And especially for the Elden tree, like it seems like it blesses everything around it. And so there's so much to this, and also still there's the idea of rebirth constantly as a in this game a tarnished, but it's very similar to that Dark Souls kind of feeling until you get down into the deep lore of stuff. So it's fascinating, and there's moments where you get into areas and you go, this looks and feels like Dark Souls in a good way, and which is really cool. And so it's a new game, but they're building off their concepts, and there's also the other side of like Sekiro and Bloodborne that plays into how the gameplay works and their ideas and their concepts and their speed of the game too, because this game can be pretty fast sometimes, because like some of the bosses and the fights, they will go fast. And so it's fascinating. My favorite thing about this game in some ways is you get into a fight with an enemy or a boss and you realize, I haven't entirely fought something quite like this. It's very, very different and weird. And that's the beauty of it. Like that's the cool thing. It challenges you to think outside the box. And like sometimes you may have to use a certain type of weapon on an enemy, not just because they're strong against everything else, but they are strong against everything else because they are physically different. It's not just, oh, they take like 10-15% more damage. No, it causes them to eventually have serious repercussions because of that weapon type. And those are really cool. And if you've played the game, you probably have an idea of some of the critters that are more glass-like, and you know what I'm talking about then. But it's an amazing world. The world is big, but not super big, but yet it's huge. Because if you explore every little nook and cranny, there's so much, and that's so much fun to discover and also to see the lore, to see the different things. This is, I would say, as dark as Dark Souls in many ways, because every time you typically help out a friendly, the story doesn't usually end very well for them. And so that's fascinating, because you'll meet so many characters along the way that you go, I enjoy this character, and I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but there's a few that you go, I think there might be some at least positive ending, at least at this time. But for most, it's sad stuff. And that's the beauty of this series, that it really puts that question into all of us of, does life ever truly give us like a great thing all the time? And the answer is no. Like, it often gives us rough experiences, and we have to learn and grow through those. And if we can overcome them, then we can be better. And that's a cool thing. Man, the other things that I really enjoy is the customization. This game, weapon-wise, is a ton of fun. The fact that you can put on different ashes of war onto your weapons that are not unique, like specialty weapons. Really cool. Ironically, the specialty weapons are still amazing because they have special things that sometimes nothing else can do. And then other times you'll find ashes of war that do the same thing, and you can put it on a new type of weapon, which is really awesome. And so there's so much to discover in that. You can mess with garments to a certain extent, which is really neat to get a little bit more specialty look that you prefer. This game came out truly complete. In the first few days, it had some connection issues with multiplayer, but I wouldn't put that as like a terrible negative by any means. But it was just something that was like, that's interesting. But in the age of games coming out where things are, you get 40% of the game when it first comes out. Elden Ring came out and it was 112% there. And I say that not to be just crass, because it's like, there's a 12% that shouldn't exist, but it's compared to most other games. This game has so much in it, and it was truly complete and whole and just well built. They came out with a patch pretty quickly to address some of the minor things, and even to go, okay, we understand it's kind of hard sometimes with how big of a world to find characters, and so we'll at least mark them on your mini map to let you know, hey, this character is over here. And that's great. It's one of those things that, does it simplify the game and make it a little easier? Yes, it does. And so it does something that they typically don't do in the Dark Souls and other series. But it makes sense with the fact that this is so much bigger. The other major thing about that bigness is you run into a boss fight that's frustrating, you go to a different area and you just explore for a while. You do something else. You find new bosses, you find new castles, you find new experiences and dungeons. And it's amazing. That is the beauty of Elden Ring. Like it is truly a game that will stretch you, and you just want to keep going and looking behind every little nook and cranny to see, is there something more behind this area? Is there something more right around the corner? And usually there is, and it's different and it's new, and then sometimes you come around the corner and it is actually something that you've seen before. So overall positives, it's great story stuff once you really pay attention to it. Great gameplay. The classes are a hilarious amounts of fun, and to just experiment with all the different Ashes of War and weapons, it's amazing. Like there's so much you can do in this game. So the other thing I would say is it's got just some fantastic, graphics wise, I enjoy them, and the cutscenes are fantastic as well. The graphics, may not be the most high end, but it almost makes me think of like Nintendo in many ways, that they're willing to go, we may not have the best of the best as far as a certain thing, but what we're going to do is make something that is complete and full and fun and absolutely chock full of the things that you want and the lessons that we have learned from our other games. Because this is truly the most accessible because of the open world, because you get stuck on the place, just warp somewhere else and go play there. Go somewhere else. Go find Castle Morn. Go east over to Caelid and get yourself killed. Go past the first big castle and go into the lakes of Laurenia and just explore, and then go to the rest of the game at some point. And it's amazing, if you're paying attention, how far you can get into a lot of the game without having ever defeated a boss. It's fascinating in that. So this game, just so good. Negatives. There's not a whole lot that I could say for negatives. I think, for one, it's a minor thing, is there is replication or duplication of certain enemies or bosses. Now, enemies, that's just a thing. That's going to be a thing all the time. You go into a catacombs, you're expecting a certain type of creature. Fair. More so what I'm saying is sometimes you will fight versions of parts of the Erd tree, essentially, and those will show up a lot in two different forms. And they occasionally change somewhat, but they're very similar, and it gets a little stale after a while, especially when you're exploring every nook and cranny, which I tend to do. So some of my negativity is only because I explore everything, and this game is big, and that's the beauty of it, and that's what I love. But it also can be a negative if you want to see everything. It can sometimes slow you down to the point of, I'm getting bored, because you're just wanting to make sure you didn't miss anything. And that's not really the game's fault. That's just personality. So the duplication of certain boss types, those are things that can kind of be a little bit frustrating, but it's a really, really minor thing. The other thing that I'm sad to see is customization on clothing. It's still very, they at least gave us something, which I'm glad. That's big, because if they didn't, I would have been really kind of frustrated at them. But I do miss the Dark Souls 1 and I guess Dark Souls 2 era. This is one of the few things I really truly miss from Dark Souls 2, because they did give us the power stances and stuff like that from Dark Souls 2, which is really good. But the one thing that I miss from those first two games is armor customization and upgrading, as in being able to, you couldn't customize it in the sense of change the look. So this is a new thing, which is amazing. But you could upgrade them for better stats as you found resources. And I miss that. Like, why couldn't we have our blacksmith help us with that? Our version. Another thing, sorry, side note for positive, backtrack, but there was a character that showed up from this game that's been in many of the Dark Souls games, and that's also why there's a connection. I'm like, I think this is almost like a rebirth from the Dark Souls era of the Age of Fire's come to an end, and now the Age of the Erd Tree, anyway, or the Elden Ring. Something to think about, but I don't know. Haven't gone so deep into the lore just yet. Any other negatives there? Matchmaking sometimes is hard, and it doesn't always work even after they fixed it. There's moments where you will put your password on, you'll put your summon sign down, they will use their fur calling finger remedy and still get nothing. Nothing will show up. And you can reload the game, and sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. It's just strange. It's a pretty minor thing. That's the beauty of this game. Like, the negatives are more nitpicks. That's all they are, because this game has so much to offer, because it just gives you so many options. And that's the beauty of a good game, that it's going to have depth of its story, it's going to have depth of its world, and it's going to give you good options for customization, for elaboration, for just telling your own story. And the amount of times me and my friend would get to talk and sometimes play together, but then also just talk about how we experience different areas. Because I played as an astrologer. That's a very different play style than a heavy melee type. And so I had a very different experience than my friend. And it was fascinating to hear that. And, sometimes they were like, oh, yeah, I beat this boss and it was super easy. And was not easy for me. But then I would go to other places and just wreck them because I could outrange them, and it was great. And so it's fascinating. I do say that the summonable ashes make things both easier. Well, they just make things easier, and that's a good thing. I it does actually ironically give it more accessibility to those that want it, but it's also, it's not to the same difficulty in some ways as the older games. And so I guess you could say that could be a negative, that it isn't as hard, but yet this opens that door to so many new players that are going to get excited and hopefully turn the tables back a little bit. We just had a Dark Souls remastered, so there's an opportunity to play it again, and to experience what also they have to offer, because this game, I'm not sure if it beats for me Dark Souls 1 just yet. I don't know. I love this game. This game is amazing. But I threw my controller down when I played Dark Souls 1 for the first time because it made me so mad. And then I came back to it a year later and played the heck out of it, beat it, had a blast, because I realized it's a game that's going to test you. It's going to put you in a different thought process. And once you understand that, you're good. And this game does a really good job of starting you out of, you're going to die, and it's okay. It is okay. It's not a bad thing. You will learn, you will revive, you can go get your runes, hopefully, and then keep going. And potentially just go somewhere else and come back in 15, 20 levels and you'll be fine. And then there's the hardcore epic players that can do it all without taking any damage the entire game, which is insane and awesome. And I'm impressed. So overall, yeah, the negatives are really, really minor. There's just nothing that I could go, man, that is just terrible. It's really just nitpicky things that nobody can really go into too crazy of detail. So if I had to give a rating out of 10, like 10 being the best, it's somewhere between a 10 and a 9.85. Like it's just in that scale of just, this is a game that came out and it was whole and complete, and they're still patching it just to fix things that they're noticing that are bugs, or adjusting stats of weapons because maybe they find out that something is way too crazy than what even they had tested. And that's going to happen with games, and that's the beauty of the internet, and that we can do that nowadays. But this game came out in a way that it wasn't Cyberpunk 2077 or Battlefield 2042 or even Battlefront 2 or Fallout 76 or fill in the blank for just about any, Halo Infinite, even, that it came out, Halo Infinite came out and everybody is super excited, I myself included, and then the reality hit of this game is missing things and it doesn't have everything it needs. And in Elden Ring, it is a whole game and not just some small game. This is hundreds of hours of game if you want to really explore it all and keep doing playthrough after playthrough because you're having so much fun. Like, you could do it really fast, in some of the world record times, or just several minutes if you're going crazy, but it's a game that you could spend an evening with, and another evening, and then a month. And that's the beauty of it. It is a game that tells you a story that is deep, but yet not, especially if you don't want it to be. But if you really pay attention, it's got so many layers, as From Software tends to do. So I highly recommend this game. If you haven't gotten a hold of it yet and heard about all the hype over the past month, 2 months now, go get this game. It is beautiful. It is amazing. Does it have... Oh, that is a slight nitpick at times. There are moments where the graphics don't work very well. Okay? Slight nitpick. Something that we should at least acknowledge, right? That there are times where the graphics... I will be riding on my horse and a creature or enemy will literally appear out of nowhere within 10 feet of my character, 15 feet even. It's crazy weird. Like, it's almost like the game is trying to load an entire open world or something and struggles. And so I'm not upset by it. It's just sometimes it's kind of a funny thing. But there's also moments where it gets pretty pixelated when you've ridden a long time in the game around in the open world or done a lot of stuff and then go into a dungeon. It'll have some pixelation because I really think behind the scenes it's keeping track of everything that you've discovered and seen in that playthrough, and then it's struggling to keep up. Now, I'm playing on still an Xbox One, not the next generation console either, so that may be a part of that. And I understand, but honestly, other than that, it runs well on console, and I have enjoyed it thoroughly. So, Elden Ring, have you played it? What have you thought about it? You give me your thoughts. What's your favorite class? What's your favorite weapon? Not just the thing that's most powerful, but the thing that you enjoy the most. That's always the fun, isn't it? Is finding the thing that you enjoy the most. Personally, I love the ice spells that are in this game. Adula's Moonblade, I believe, and then the big ice crystal shard of Doom. And then when it hits frost buildup, it's amazing, right? And then Blood Loss is on that same side of just, this is so hilariously fun to watch. But yeah, anyway, Elden Ring. I hope that you guys have played it, and if not, let me know. And also let me know if you have. What's your favorite class and favorite weapon? All right, peace out, y'all. I've been Cody, and this is Keepers Nerdin'. Bye.